Hey, no Coach Sal last week due to a surprise appearance by Canadian Football League Commissioner Randy Ambrosie, but he returns with his pregame salutations. Let's bring back the coach, John Salavanis. Glad to have you back, Coach Sal.
Oh, glad to be back, Bubba. I missed you last week.
Yeah, we didn't mean to bump you there, but the commissioner, he put his foot down and said, I have some things to say.
Oh, well, he's an old lineman, so I'll forgive him.
Hey, big clash tonight as we're talking about here on the Ticats Audio Network, Coach. And, I'm going to continue on sort of some of the things that I was poking Andy with in our first block there. That, I know the TSN, the newspaper, the media, the fans, they're all talking about this big return of Bo Levi Mitchell. They're talking about Dustin Crum. And, of course, the quarterback, it's a quarterback-driven league. But I'm going to turn the tables a little bit and talk about this Ticats defense. And I kind of hinted at it earlier. Statistically, they're not where they want to be right now, and this is an important part of victory for them this evening.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Bubba, to mention that and to highlight it. The storyline is Bo's return, but this Hamilton defense is giving up an average of 115 yards on the ground. They rank 9th in points allowed. They're last in yards allowed per play. They give up over 8 yards per play. They've given up 14, 30-plus yards in the air. They've got 21 TDs against them. This D has been penalized 23 times. All of that is not what Tiger-Cat football is all about. And the defense really has to come to fore in this game tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very un-Mark Washington-esque. And when you're going up against a young, exciting quarterback like Dustin Crum, what adjustments would you make as a coach to sort of fix some of those stat columns?
Well, Andy, you mentioned it in your quarterback analysis of Crum. When you talk about Crum being a scrambler and being able to make yards, I go back to Bill Belichick's idea. Players, do your job. If you're a defensive end and your job is to contain the man. Make him move back to the inside. If you're an inside player, you force him out to your outside player. So every defensive call relies on each player doing their own job. In containing Crum really is important because if you look at their stats, in their last 3 games rushing, including their quarterback, Ottawa has 136 yards on the ground, 150 yards on the ground, and 184 yards on the ground. So they are really pressing the ability of their quarterback to scramble out and get yards for them. So defensively, you've got to take that away from them. And, when you look at where we're ranked right now defensively, this is going to be a massive job for the defensive front.
So do you think the Ticats should load the box more or apply more pressure and have more single coverage on the receivers?
It's always a position where you have to kind of cut it in half. You want half of what you're doing to be the pressure game, and then you want half of it to be the cover game. You want to put him in bad positions so that he doesn't have the ability to make the difference for you. If you look back at the Redblacks against Calgary, if you look at the stats they had, the Redblacks were able to convert second down 52% of the time. That's ridiculous. You can't allow them the position that they're in if you're giving up first down yardage to be able to convert their second down plays. So, at a certain time in the game, whether, maybe you got them backed up in there, do you want to play pressure or do you want to play zone? Which is going to confuse them the most. But I think you have to mix it up throughout the game.
Coach, I know that Orlando Steinauer likes to break up the season into thirds and create mini goals, I guess, for each 6 games. Is that something you did as a coach? Is that an approach you took? And if not, what was your kind of outlook for the season as a whole?
No, you're absolutely right. You divide the season into 3 parts. Part 1, the Cats had 4 divisional games, and they won only one of them. So now we enter the second 1/3 of the season, and they'll meet divisional teams 4 times starting tonight. So you have to be able to make ground up in this 4-game section, including the Labor Day game against Toronto. In the last 1/3 of the season, we only have 2 divisional games. So if you're going to put yourself in position to be a playoff team, this is the 4-game stint that you have to work with.
So what would the goal be for this 6-game stint?
Well, I think you got to flip what they did. You know, what were we? We were 1 win divisionally in the first 6 games. The other win came against Edmonton. So we're going to get the 4 divisional opponents. We'll see Ottawa twice. So tonight's game is really important because you break the tie with the Redblacks by winning tonight. So there's only 3 games against them. There are 4 games against Toronto. We've already had 2 losses, so Labor Day then becomes a really big game for them. In Montreal, we get next on our schedule. So all in all, you know, I think we're in great position as long as we can get into this ball game tonight. And the heat factor is going to be there. If you really think about it, Ottawa had to travel. They played late last week. They had to travel, and they had to play an overtime game. So they'll come out with a whole lot of adrenaline in the first part of the ball game, and the Cats have to be able to withstand that and come back later in the ball game, hopefully with a better perspective on conditioning.
Coach, I know I mentioned earlier that we have a somewhat healthy O-line, and as I say that, I'm looking at the 6-game injury list, and there's 3 potential starters on that. But regardless, we have seen these names playing so far this season quite a bit, and that's, I guess, why I led to, okay, I'm familiar with these guys. It's not anybody new. And we have a dynamic runner like James Butler, who was very prevalent in the 2 wins, but sort of less existent last week against Toronto. What would your approach be for getting Bo Levi back into the swing of things, especially early in this game where the Ticats have struggled so much, having 0 touchdowns in the first quarter all season long?
It's crazy.
Well, you know, Mitchell's going to have some rust. Let's be realistic about it. You know, the guy hasn't played that many games. I think he's probably had some better input with Condell, the coordinator, in terms of what he likes in the ballgame. But to be successful, he will need protection and he will need a run game. And maybe the fact that we bring Thomas Erlington back will help in that area because he can get out of the backfield and be a receiver for him as well as a runner. But that old line that we're talking about has never had the same 5 players in the same position for any of the 6 games. They need to really do a job tonight in protection. And Chris Van Zyle's not on the roster this evening. They bring in Zaire, that we know very little or nothing about at this point, as a backup, and Black, the draft choice, as a backup. So that front line 5, and it has to do a great job.
Yeah, you got Kendrick Sardor in there at right tackle, and Tyrone Riley takes a step out this week as being the starter last week. Is that a difference maker, that bring in Sardor and not having Riley?
Well, you know, it's hard to say because the complement of players, like Kemp played the right side last week while Riley played the left. Now Kemp has to go from the right side over to the left to allow Sartor to come in on the right side. All of that is paramount to saying, you know, we're not sure who's the best at which position. And at the same time, you know, every time you miss a starter or a starter misses a game, that puts a lot more pressure on the guy that has to make the move to cover for him.
You're talking about guys that Bo Levi will be leaning on. Hidden in the fact there in this contest is this will be his first regular season game with Richie Sandani. Remember, Sandani missed the first 2 games of the season And who did he have the touchdown connection with in the preseason? Richie Sindani. So a guy that he's familiar with out of Calgary could be very, very important for Bo Levi in sort of getting going, and someone that you just kind of feel like I know where he's going to be.
Yeah, but remember this: Sandini was playing at the slot back position in those ball games with Mitchell. Now he's out at the wide receiver position, so I don't know how much change that makes. But if I'm looking at guys that have to get into this ball game and do a great job receiving, you've got to look. Goodwin had a great game last week. White has to come forward in this ball game, as well as Shaq Williams. Those guys have to really step up. And you've got to get McAllister somewhere in the open area where he can use his ability, his run ability as a return type player, where he can break some tackles and make some big gains.
Coach, the Ticats have 66 penalties this year, which is last in the league, and going against Ottawa with only 36 penalties, first in the league. What is going on with the penalties, and how do you fix that tonight?
Well, if you look at the penalties and you divide the penalties up as to good penalties and bad penalties, a good penalty may be where, your quarterback's going to get killed, so you tackle a guy as an offensive lineman. But the bad penalties are those that are
avoidable.
Selfish penalties.
Somewhat avoidable.
Yeah, they're avoidable. They're selfish. You don't retaliate. You don't go after somebody just because you're mad at the guy because he pushed you a little too hard. So, I really think that it comes down to coaches can coach the players, but they cannot stop the players from doing what they're doing. The player himself has to have the ability to maintain his composure and not have those unnecessary penalties.
But Coach, how do you coach that? I mean, do you have is there have to be player fines or it's become an issue. We can't hide from this. How do you stop it?
Well, when we had it with Coach Bruno, when Coach Bruno was there, Coach Bruno had a saying. He said, "Where you hurt them is in their pocketbook," and so you fine them. And we had a fine system set up where those penalties cost the player pretty dearly. And, of course, they weren't making that much money to start with. But I think that's probably the only way you can approach it.
Well, certainly needs to change here again, because hurting yourself is not what you want to keep doing in order to take this middle third of the season and turn that 2-4 record into maybe this is 4-2 in the second and middle third and end up being 6-6 or hopefully even better than that. But 23 special teams penalties so far on the season. That's 4 higher than anyone else in the league, including the 0-7 Edmonton Elks. Just not the Jeff Reinbold-led special teams unit we're used to seeing. However, there has been some excitement in that unit, and you got Mark Leggio perfect on the season still in field goals. You have some dynamic returners. How big is the field position battle going to be tonight?
Well, I think it's huge. I really do. Again, early in the ball game, the adrenaline flow from Ottawa is going to be very high. And so with their great kicker, Leone, as a punter, and with their field goal kicker, Ward, if they get themselves in position, they're going to score some points. So you have to really be able to maintain field position with your kicking game. And that goes back to the idea that if you convert your second downs and you keep the ball moving on the offensive side, you get enough 10 yards, you're going to end up in the end zone.
Coach, one quick one here. We're running short on time here. We didn't get to talk to you about this last week with what the adjustments were made when the Tunde Adeleke came off the injury list, and the fact of sliding him to halfback and keeping Casatonis at the safety position. Do you like that?
Yeah, I'm worried about tonight because we have 6 players for 5 positions, and one of those players, the backup, Burke, is a draft choice. And you got 3 free safeties playing at the same time. I'm concerned if something happens, how we're going to cover that area.
With his pregame salutations, he's John Salavanis. As I always like to say, he's a beauty, folks. Coach Sal, we certainly appreciate your analysis and your time. We hope you enjoy this evening's game.
I will enjoy it, and thanks again, Bubba and Andy.